the first fall break at Ohio State in history. Well, if you don't know, my name is Andy. I'm one of the pastors here. Andrew, you are so tall where you're at. Like, man, it's like, I feel like I'm blocking everybody. My name's Andy. A little fun fact about me, a little Mac Daddy fun fact for you, is that I am a political junkie. Does anybody else really like politics and likes talking politics and reading about politics? Okay, I'm not alone. I love politics. I just love to talk about it. I love to read about it. You can find me surfing CNN.com or one of the various news sites almost all the time. And it kind of came to a head in 2004 because that was the first time that I got to vote in a presidential election. It was really cool. And I was on campus, there's people who were really excited about one side and people who were excited about the other side. We had Jon Stewart, he came for the Daily Show, and he was here the entire week. How cool is that? Every day he was from Columbus. Then John Kerry had a huge rally in South Oval and had Bruce Springsteen. So I'm sitting at my apartment and I'm listening to The Boss play. How cool is that? And then President Bush, he had a big rally at Nationwide and the governor was there, Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's so awesome, just so much excitement. I was just really into it. I created Facebook groups against the person that I didn't like. I had my sign and I was out loud and proud. But here's the thing. Eventually you had the election day. It was a rainy election day. It was in the old Union, and it's just the line went on forever. I got out of class 4:30. I'm are the polls going to close? Am I not going to be able to cast my vote? I'm waiting in line. And I finally cast my vote. I'm man, this vote matters. Here in Ohio, the vote matters. And here's the thing, whether you voted for Kerry or whether you voted for Bush or whether you wrote in your own name, it didn't matter. It was just you were a part of something bigger. And I think we all want to be a part of something bigger. I think that's in all of us, that we all want to be a part of something bigger. And in this series, we've been going through this series called Conventional, and we've been looking at Christ. And we've been basically seeing how Christ lives, how he lived an unconventional life. And that as the body of believers, as people who are following Christ or trying to follow Christ, or basically saying I'm with Christ, then we are to live unconventionally as well. But here's the thing, whether you're on one spectrum where you're just kind of checking this Jesus thing out, or whether you're man, I grew up in the church, it doesn't really matter. We still have to answer this question. If Christ is worthy to follow, and if you decided to follow him, then what exactly would you become a part of? So that's the question for all of us today. If we're to follow Christ or decide to follow Christ, then what exactly are we becoming a part of? So if you want to look and turn into your bulletin, the first point in your bulletin is that we become a part of something alive. We become a part of something alive. We're in Matthew 28 today. So if you want to flip to Matthew 28:1, it's also going to be up on the screen. And in Matthew 28:1, this is right after Jesus dies, right after the crucifixion. After the Sabbath, at dawn, on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance was like lightning, and his clothes were white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and became like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you are looking for Jesus who is crucified. He is not here, he has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay." So the second point, the second little dash in your bulletin is that we do not worship a God of the tombs, but a God who lives. We do not worship a God of the tombs, but a God who lives. Like here, let's kind of paint the picture here. Jesus, he dies on Passover Friday, on Sabbath, they can't do anything, and then here's Sunday, Sabbath in Jewish culture is on Saturday, and then Sunday, this is the day that these two girls, the two Marys, are at the tomb. And they're at the tomb to try to anoint him. They can't do that on Saturday, so here they are on Sunday. They're expecting, the whole rock over the tomb. They come to the tomb, and then here's an angel, and then the rock comes, the door comes open, and then you have to imagine the guards. What are the guards thinking? They're like, what is going on here? This is crazy. They basically pass out, and then the angel tells them, he's not here. Come and see. Come and see. He is not in here. He's not in the tomb. He's not dead. And that's the thing. We're not worshiping a dead guy. We're not worshiping a dead Jesus. He's not in the tomb. It's he's not here, for he has risen. What you see in a lot of different religions is you see basically people paying respect to a dead person, or you see people adhering to a certain set of rules or a certain set of standards or regulations, or you see people paying alms to a statue, or you see people memorizing an ancient text. This isn't the case here. We're not doing that we're not doing that. As believers, we're not doing that. We are not worshiping someone who is dead, but someone who is alive. Let me tell you this story. I had a chance to go to Jerusalem for Easter a couple years ago. And in Jerusalem, how everything works is that there's two sites where they believe that Jesus was buried. There's a traditional site, and then there's kind of a non-traditional site, kind of a Protestant site, so to speak. Without saying that, but basically a traditional Protestant. And so I went on Saturday. They had this huge candlelight service, and I was like, we weren't going to do candlelight service, but we still wanted to go to that site. So you're kind of weaving through the city to find this spot. And there's this huge church called the Holy Sepulchre Church over it. It's this huge thing. And the thing is, everyone is just crowded. There's crowds. People are pushing. They're angry. Literally, people physically fight from two different sects outside the church. Every year, they fight for the grounds, for the ownership of this place. So they're fighting. People are angry. People are grouchy. They're all trying to get to the site. Then when you finally get to the site, there's just bottles of water and just litter and garbage everywhere. And then you see Palestinians going and picking up all of the trash. And I'm all these pilgrims are just basically destroying this place. Then you get into the place, and there's this little rock. And this little rock is where they believe that Jesus his body first laid. And so they people will buy cloths, and they'll go and wipe the rock, and they'll put it in their pocket, and then they'll go on their merry way, thinking that, man, I've got this rock that's touched the ground where Jesus touched, so now I'm blessed. I even saw a guy take off his belt and drag his belt on this rock, thinking all right, maybe I have some it's some superhero belt now. I have some magical power that Jesus is gonna give me some go for my go for my life, basically. And then I get inside, and there's candles lit for different dead people, basically. There's paintings of Christ. There's different paintings everywhere. And there's a guy who basically, he keeps telling his son, he's go over there and touch that painting. It's this painting of Christ, and the little, he's 5 years old, he touches the painting, and then he comes scurrying back. He's go and touch that painting, and he goes and he touches the painting. And his dad just keeps telling him to go back and forth just to touch this painting, as if touching this painting is going to somehow bless him. And I don't know about you, but in that moment, I'm so angry. I'm if this is actually the place, if this is actually a holy place, or actually a place where Jesus is at, nothing about this place, nothing about this setting seems like Jesus is here. And I'm just praying. I'm God, I want to flip tables over right now. That's how I feel. Are you even here? How do you feel about this? And I just got this sense of I'm not here. They're worshiping a dead guy. They're not worshiping me. The question is it possible for you and I to be worshiped, to be basically doing the same thing? Is it possible that you and I, we can go through our day or go through our lives and basically be all right, I'll kind of pay respect to Christ here. I'll kind of like, I'll remember what he's done from time to time. Maybe I'll go to like kind of the grave site, think of a good memory, say thanks, and then I kind of go on with my life. Or ask Jesus to kind of just bless my life, and as long as he blesses my life, as long as I have my power belt on, then we're good. Is it possible that this lives in us? I went to the other site. The other site is called the Garden Tomb. And the Garden Tomb is beautiful. It's a garden. There's trees. It's just lush. It's beautiful. And they have they had a couple tombs there, and one of them was open. Obviously, there wasn't a stone on it. And above it was a plaque called, "He is not here, for he is risen." And it was on Easter morning, and the pastor was talking. He was speaking in English and in Arabic and in Hebrew, and he kept pointing over, and he's like, "He's not here. He's not in that tomb, but he's risen. He is not there. You can't find him on earth. The place where he was supposed to be, he's not." Do we understand that? Man, this is a Jesus who was crucified, who died, and then rose again. He's not dead. He's alive. This is the only God that we can find in this world that is alive. And we get an opportunity, we get invited into worshiping that, into being a part of that, into witnessing that. This is unconventional. You just don't see this, you don't see people rising from the dead every day. This is unconventional, and that's how God works. So we become a part of something alive. The second point is that we become a part of something mobile. In verse 6, "He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell to his disciples, he has risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I have told you." So the women hurried away from the tomb, afraid yet filled with joy, and ran to tell his disciples. Suddenly Jesus met them. "Greetings," he said. They came to him, clasped his feet, and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me." So that second little point underneath the mobile part is that we are not to be stationary, but on the move. We are not to be stationary, but on the move. Look at what is happening here. They come to the tomb, and then basically the angel's like, "Come and see." So they go and see, they see that he's not there, and then immediately, right after they say, "Come and see," it's "Go and tell." It's like, go and tell. Go tell the disciples, and then tell them to come to Galilee. So they see that Jesus isn't there. They're like, "Oh my gosh, they've seen what he's done," and they're like, "All right, well, let's go. We got to go." So they obey. They go, and they're going. They're on their way, and then that's where Jesus intersects them. And then Jesus said, they worship. They see. Just imagine that. They see the empty tomb. They see that he's not dead, and then they see in the flesh that he's alive, and they worship. And then Jesus says the exact same thing as the angel. He's like, "Go to the disciples and tell them to go to Galilee." Because that's where Jesus is going to be at. But if you're Jesus, just put yourself in the shoes of Jesus. If you're Jesus and you just died, and then you just rose again, which just doesn't happen every day, wouldn't you go into the place where the most people are at? You guys remember at that time, everyone is still in the city. Everyone's still in Jerusalem. They're at the temple. They've just done all the Passover stuff. It's the Passover festival. Wouldn't it make more sense for Jesus to be like, "All right, let's go back to the city. Let's go back to, I'm going to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to go to the temple, and I'm going to, knock on all the doors of all those Pharisees and be like, 'And what? I'm here. You killed me, but now I'm alive.'" I would go to Pilate. I would go to Herod. I would go to all my doubters. I'd go to all the seekers. I'd be like, "All right, here I am." I'd go into the place where the most people are at. Then I would get this awesome publicist, this social media guru. I'd get this marketing genius, and I'd be like, "Just go and spread the word. Bring everybody right here. It's going to be huge, huge." Like, just bring everybody in here. It's going to be a spectacle. It's going to be exciting. Like, everybody just see that I'm alive. Wouldn't that make sense if you were in his shoes? But he does something so unconventional here. He goes to like an obscure place. He goes to like the obscure place in Galilee where he had ministered to. That is unbelievable. But this is like consistent with what he's done throughout his ministry. Do you remember the story of him feeding the 5,000? There's 5,000 dudes there, and there's like women and children, and then he has a loaf of bread, like 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish, and they're like, what are we going to do? He feeds everyone, and they have like extra food there, and they're like, what? Like, this is crazy. Then he like moves, he goes somewhere, and they follow him, and then they're like, well, we're here, we're following you, and he's like, you're not following me because you actually want me, you're following me because you want your stomachs filled. He's like, well, this is the thing. I am the bread of life. If you want to follow me, you have to eat me, and you have to drink my blood. Can you imagine the disciples? Like, they're a part of this movement, and then all of a sudden, at the height of Jesus' popularity, he has the eat my flesh, drink my blood sermon. Like, come on, guys. Like, man, you have a stadium full of people, and you're like, eat me and drink my blood. Like, no, that's not a good church growth strategy. Like, what are you thinking, Jesus? And you have to think, like, throughout his whole life, there's never one point where he's like, hey guys, let's go to the temple. Like, remember, the temple's the center of everything. They had all the ceremonial rites. They had the priests, like a select few, which did all these sacrifices. That was kind of the heartbeat of this culture. Not at one point was he like, all right, like, you guys want to follow me? Well, go to the temple. I'm going to be at the temple. I'm going to be at the synagogue. I'm speaking at the synagogue this week. Are you guys coming? Like, he isn't handing out flyers saying, I'm going to be at the synagogue this week. Like, he's not like, come and see. He's just like, go and tell. He's constantly on the move. Like, Joe's not here today because he actually had surgery. He didn't know. He's doing great. He's doing great. Probably going to get out today. But Joe and I hung out with a guy that we connected to on Friday Night Thrive, and we got some food with him, and we sat down, and I had invited him out to church and group and stuff like that, and we're sitting down with him, and he's like, I'm so sorry that I haven't come to church. Like, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, dude, buddy, you don't have to be sorry. Like, church, this right here is not the end. This is not the end. This right here, this gathering is just a means to the end. But this is not the end in itself. Like, church is just, this gathering here is an opportunity to connect with other believers, but it's not the end in itself. And I think all of us might have a skewed idea of what church actually is. I think typically we might think of church as a place where there are programs and a performance done by professionals. I think typically we might think of church as a place where there are programs and a performance or performances done by professionals. There's this book called Radical by David Platt. I'm just going to read just a page, so just kind of like stay with me here. This is what David Platt has to say. He says, this is where I am most convicted as a pastor of a church in the U.S. I am part of a system that has created a whole host of means and methods, plans and strategies for doing church that require little, if any, power from God. And it's not just pastors who are involved in this charade. I'm concerned that all of us, pastors and church members in our culture, have blindly embraced an American dream mentality that emphasizes our abilities and exalts our names in the ways we do church. Consider what it takes for successful businessmen and businesswomen, effective entrepreneurs and hardworking associates, shrewd retirees and idealistic students to combine forces with a creative pastor to grow a successful church today. Clearly, it doesn't require the power of God to draw a crowd in our culture. A few key elements that we can manufacture will suffice. First, we need a good performance. In an entertainment-driven culture, we need someone who can captivate the crowds. If we don't have a charismatic communicator, we are doomed. So even if we have to show him on a video screen, we must have a good preacher. It's even better if he has an accomplished worship leader with a strong band at his side. Next, we need a place to hold the crowds that will come. So we gather all of our resources to build a multi-million-dollar facility to house a performance. We must make sure that all facets of the building are excellent and attractive. After all, that's what our culture expects. Honestly, that's what we expect. Finally, once the crowds get there, we need to have something to keep them coming back. So we need to start programs. First class, top-of-the-line programs for kids, for youth, for families, for every age and stage. In order to have these programs, we need professionals to run them. That way, for example, parents can simply drop their kids off at the door and the professionals can handle the ministry for them. I know this may sound oversimplified and exaggerated, but are these not the elements we think of when we consider growing dynamic, successful churches in our day? We Christians are living out the American dream in the context of our communities of faith. We have convinced ourselves that if we can position our resources and organize our strategies, then in church, as in every other sphere of life, we can accomplish anything we set our minds to. Like, here's the thing, there are certain rules of the game, unfortunately. And it's like when I read something like that, there's just something ungospel about that. There's something in me that's just like, let's just screw the rules of the game. I'm tired of the rules of the game. Like, I just want to be a people who just absolutely love Jesus. I just want to be a people who are not like, just come into our place, but I want to be a people who are just scattered, who are just on the move. Let's just go. The reality is that church is a people who are gathered together to come and see Christ and witness what he has done. Scattered outward on the move to tell the world the good news of the gospel. This is church. That church is a people who are gathered together to come and see Christ and witness what he has done and be scattered outward on the move to tell the world the great news, the good news of what Christ has done. So this time here is just a time where we are gathered together to come and see Christ and witness what he has done, and then we are sent out, scattered wherever we're at, to share the good news, to tell the good news of what he has done. That is who we are as a people. This right here is not an end in itself. This is just a means of connecting with Christ and then going. If we follow Christ, and we are on the move. But the problem is that too many times we're found stationary. Like, how do you know if you're stationary? How do you know? I came up with 3 indicators. And these are in your bulletin. It's like the 1, 2, 3, I think. The ABC. And the A is that you're not connected to those who don't know. To those who don't know what Christ has done. You're not connected to those who don't know. I was an intern for the North American Missionary Board. And so every month I got like an intern report. And as in this intern report, it would ask the question, how have you been actively ministering to the lost, the lonely, and the unloved? And here I am. I'm a missionary on this campus. And there were months when I'm like, I don't know if I can put anything down. Like, have you thought about that? Like, have you ever felt that way? Like, man, I'm not connected to anyone who doesn't know about Jesus. Like, here's the thing. I am surrounded by thousands of people on a daily basis who don't know who Christ is and what he has done, but yet I'm connected to no one. And I am supposed to be a missionary on this campus. I don't know if you're in the same boat as me. Maybe that's you. The second thing is that we retreat out of the world and are isolated within community. That we are drawn out or retreat out of the world and are isolated within community. Now, here's the thing. I love our community. In our community, Andrew's wearing the shirt that says home. A big part of who we are is community. And we want everyone to find a home here and find community, and God has blessed us with a great community. But at the same time, like, our community was not intended to be drawn inward. Our community was not intended to retreat from the world, but to be Christ within the world. You know, I spent a year in Jordan, and I was able to connect to a church in Jordan. And this church, it was filled with great people who really loved Christ. But in Jordan, what happens is that there are 6% of the population are Christians, 94% of the population are Muslims, and you're not allowed to proselytize. You're not allowed to, both sides basically aren't, but you're not allowed to basically talk to a Muslim, for example, and basically share Christ and hope that they would become a Christian. Like, that's illegal. So what has happened is that over generations, I mean hundreds and maybe even thousands of years, Christians have just kind of like shut the doors. And that's what this community had done. They were just basically trying to maintain their group. Just kind of keep their group. They just don't want to lose anybody. And kind of wall people in. Like, there was a time where I had two friends who were Muslim, and they were like really interested in Christ, and they're like, I want to come to church. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is amazing. So I took them to this church, and no one connected with them. No one got coffee with them. No one got tea with them. No one, it was just kind of like, who are these guys? Like, are these guys spies? They don't belong to us. Like, I don't know, like, we got to be very careful around these guys. They were thinking so much about this, they were so drawn inward that the idea of actually moving outward, the idea of actually like telling people about who Christ is, was just completely foreign to them. Like, is it possible that we have this same mindset? It's interesting that where we find the disciples on the night, that Sunday night. So we have the two Marys. They run, they're at the tomb, they see the angel, Christ isn't there, then the angel tells them to go, they go to the disciples, and then where do we find, and the disciples, they're like, go to Galilee, and where do we find the disciples? We find them locked in a room, afraid of the Jews, and just basically hunkered down. That's where we find them. Drawn inward, not on the move, like Christ. The third point, the C of are you stationary, is that we have no idea where Jesus is at. You're stationary if you have no idea where Jesus is at. We're basically left groping in the dark. I don't know if you guys like haunted houses. Does anybody like haunted houses? No. A few of you? Okay. Most of them are lame. But I went to one that was not lame. It was unlame. It was awesome. It was legit. And it was this, it was on a boat. It was in Cincinnati called the USS Nightmare. Has anybody been to the USS? All right. Now, the USS Nightmare, maybe I just thought it was awesome because I was 10. But I went to the USS Nightmare, and it was on the Kentucky side, and there's like a lot of like brush and everything like that, and trees, and so you're like basically walking there, and you're like, man, I'm in like the woods here, what's gonna happen? Then you get onto the ship. And I was there with my oldest brother and my best friend. So we're there, and the guy's basically, he's like, you, come forward. And I'm like, what is going on? So like I step into this room, and then like, he's like, I want you to walk forward again. So I open this door, and I come into this door, and I'm in this room that is completely like pitch black. And I'm like 10, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm going to get killed. And then finally my brother and my best friend join me, but the whole room is pitch black. And like you can't see a single thing. So I have to leave them, and then I'm starting to hear like chainsaws in the background, and I'm like, they're gonna cut our heads off! Like, what the heck? So there's like chainsaws, it's completely pitch black, then there's strobe lights. This was like man, dance party, this is awesome. There's like strobe lights, I'm completely disoriented, I'm like, what in the world is going on? Like, I am just freaked out. And so then I'm just like groping in the dark, basically. And then finally, I just stumble upon this Kentucky Wildcat jacket, and I just hold on for my dear life. I'm just holding on to this guy in front of me as he like winds around this haunted house with all these strobes. The point being is that aren't there times in our lives when we feel just completely lost, completely just in the dark, just left groping in the dark, just paralyzed with fear, just like the disciples here, as if we have no idea where Christ is at. It's just like, man, Christ is just like that UK jacket right in front of you, but we have no idea that he's there. We're just groping in the dark. I think maybe the reason why we're not moving is that we just haven't seen him. Or maybe the reason that you aren't moving is that you've gotten comfortable and safe and secure and maybe lethargic. Or maybe just afraid. I'm just afraid of, this is kind of what Ed talked about last week, just giving up, just kind of letting go and letting Christ move you forward. You know, the great thing in this passage is that both Jesus and the angel says, do not be afraid. They're like, go on the move, but don't be afraid. You know, it didn't change the fact that Mary was afraid, and it didn't change the fact that the disciples were afraid. He's like, don't be afraid. And then when Jesus does show up in John 20, he's like, peace be with you. Like, my Father and I, we're going to give you something. We're going to give you the Spirit, and you don't have to be afraid. We're going to be with you. You're not going to have to grope around in darkness anymore. The third point is we become a part of something that's alive, something that's mobile, and something that is active. In verse 16, then the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. But when they saw him, they worshipped him. But some doubted. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always, to the very end of the age. We are no longer spectators, but we are participants. That's your next little line. We are no longer spectators, but we are participants. I've been sharing a lot of stories today. I'll share one more. I remember I loved playing soccer when I grew up, and did anybody play like select soccer back in the day? Okay, a few of you. Well, we had like, I was like part of like a candy league team, and then you had like the community team, and that community team became a select team for the Warren County Rangers. We were awesome. But like with select, you started out in the lowest division. There was the A, B, and C. We were in the C, and if you won the C division, and whoever finished last in the B division, they basically switched. So our first year, we were dominating. We were awesome. Like we beat this team 8-0. But then this team went and beat us 3-0. So that was the only game that we lost. But it was the only game that they lost. So we had to have this playoff. And when you're 9, you're like, this playoff is like everything. It was under the lights. It wasn't a blackout, but it was awesome. It could have been. Like, it was so sweet. But I played fullback. If you don't know where fullback is, it's in the defense, and I was right fullback. So basically, like, if someone beat me and got around me, it could be a goal. So I was always playing like I was on razor's edge. I was always just so afraid, like, man, what if someone goes around me and then like they score and everyone's like upset at me? So I just never played confidently in that back line. So in this game, I didn't play very much because I was on the bench because I was timid. And I was just like, man, I would rather not be in the game because I don't want to be the guy who like gets scored on. So the game, it went 0-0. It was the end of regulation. Then it went into overtime. And then it went into sudden death overtime, which means that if anybody scores, the game's over. And I'm on the sideline. I'm like, I don't want to be in this game. Like deep down, I'm rooting like for my team, but I'm like, I really want the guy who's in my position to do really well, so then I don't have to play, because if I play, what if I'm in there and it's sudden death, like the overtimes are over, and then they have penalty kicks. And I might be one of the people that would have to take them. And I don't know how to shoot a penalty kick. And I've never done that before, and I was like so scared. But here's the thing, it's easy. The point of the story is that it's easy to be a spectator. And is that possible for us to be passive spectators? It's easy to be a spectator because in that moment I had nothing to lose. Like if someone scored, it wasn't my fault. I have nothing to lose, but at the same time I had nothing to gain. You're not the guy who's going to score. You're not the guy who's going to make a difference. You're just the fan. You're just the cheerleader on the side. You're not actually getting your hands dirty. You're not actually getting in the game. And Christ is like, in this passage, he's like, go. He's like, make disciples. He's like, teach them. He's like, baptize them. These are 4 verbs. They aren't passive either. They are active. That we are not to take a position of passivity. The last little bullet point is that you can't be a disciple of Christ and be passive. It's just impossible. Like he's calling us to go and join him in reconciling the world back to him. And I don't know if you grew up, and I grew up in a church where there's this huge difference between the clergy and the laity, and it's like, man, like all the clergy, they're the ones who do everything, the leaders, they do everything, they're the ones who are active, and then I just come to church and I'm like, hey, this is a great service, and then I leave. And it wasn't until I came here to Ohio State, my sophomore year, that was the first time during a vision gathering, which we're going to have in winter. It wasn't until that, it was the first time that leaders set me down and it was like, you are the church. Like, you are the program. You are the ones who have to be active. You are the ones who are participating. You're not on the sidelines anymore, but you're in the game. And for me, I was like, I get a chance to be a part of this? Like, this is unbelievable. It completely changed my mind. And just it completely changed how I viewed everything. Because instead of going into a class and thinking, all right, during this class, I get a chance to draw inward, and I just get to sit in my seat, take my notes, and leave. Like, actually, man, I'm on a mission field. I get a chance to move outward in this class. I get a chance to connect to people. Like, just in 3 months, I was able to connect to 3 different people just within my classes. I had a computerized English class, and then I sat next to this girl. This girl's name was Brooklyn. Like, I was just talking to her about, church and stuff like that, and she was like, no way. Like, she was a commuter student, wasn't connected to community. She's like, man, I'd love to go to New Life. I'm like, that would be great. So she finally got connected. She ended up moving to campus, living with a bunch of New Life girls, ended up leading a Bible study, ended up going and being overseas on a missions trip for a month, and now she's a part of Ed's church plant. Then within that same class, there's another guy named Patrick who was an atheist, didn't want anything to do with God, but he had these audio projects, and he had a very interesting project, and I just remember that. And I was in another class with him later, like the next quarter, in an intro to writing poetry class, and so I talked to him about his poetry, and I like to write poetry, and so we were exchanging poems, and then we sat down. I was like, dude, we should hang out and get coffee. So we got coffee. I learned all about his life and about where he was at and what he thought about life and love and meaning. He never came to church, but it didn't matter because it's just an opportunity to connect with someone. And we were friends. We respected each other. And then there's someone else in that intro to poetry class. His name was Jake. And he also, for some reason, we kind of exchanged poems, and then every week we hung out and got coffee, and every week we just talked about relationships, and we talked about life. Eventually we went through the Gospel of John together. He came out to a few of our baptisms. He heard me speak once. We went to movies together. My best friend hung out with him. He was kind of on the outskirts of our community. He never came to Christ. He never really got connected in community, but it didn't really matter. Because it's just a matter of like connecting and reaching out and moving outward. You guys have an opportunity to connect within your classes. And we have an opportunity to get into the game. That Christ has given us the Spirit to get into the game, to be on the move. The last question I have is, how can you influence your sphere for Christ? Maybe you're thinking, well, maybe I don't have a sphere. Here's the thing. Everyone has a sphere. If you have a major, that's your sphere. If you live with roommates, that's part of your sphere. Wherever you spend your time, if you have a job, that's your sphere. Wherever you do, if you're part of organizations, that's your sphere. Wherever there are people, that's your sphere. And if you aren't around people, then go where people are at. And that's your sphere. And then you might ask the question, well, why don't I really have influence within my sphere? Okay, I'm not. What I mean by that is walk across the room. Instead of sitting in your seat during class, get up, walk across the room, and introduce yourself to someone. I know that's scary, but just connect to people. Ask them to get coffee. Ask them to get something to eat, and just connect with them. Just listen to them. And share the gospel. Like, share what Jesus has done with your life, with your love, by listening, by having concern for them. Not as some project, but as a person who is valuable in the eyes of Christ. So what is your step of action today? What is your step? I think wherever you're at in your life, where if you're in a place where it's like, I don't know if I could follow Jesus, or this whole Jesus thing is scary, really, he's just saying, just say yes. Just hold out your hands. Kentucky Jacket's right in front of you. All you have to do is reach out. Or maybe you have grown up in church and you've never actually taken an active step of action. And maybe this is your day to actually take an active step of action and be on the move. Or maybe you are on the move and you're just tired. And I just tell you, thank you. Like, continue being on the move. Let Jesus fill you and just keep going. Because he never stopped. He just kept moving. Just say yes. That's all I'm asking, is just say yes. That's all he's asking, is just say yes. So I'm going to pray for us. I'm going to ask the band to come up. And then we'll finish. Heavenly Father, God, I just, Lord, I thank you that you are not a God who just kind of sits back and does nothing, but you are so active and so mobile just in coming here. That in itself, that you're on the move, like you just weren't chilling in heaven, but you came down here, moved down here to interact with us, to connect with us, to be a part of our sphere. God, and that you have called us to be participants, not spectators, not passive spectators, but active participants. So God, we pray, we ask, give us the strength, just be with us. God, help us to say yes when we're afraid. Help us to say yes when we're apathetic and lethargic, comfortable. Help us to say yes even when we don't see you, and help us to reach out. In your name we pray.
You guys want to stand and worship with us when you're ready? You have a Connect card in your